The Berlin Wall was erected in 1961 and physically divided democratic West Berlin from communist East Berlin.
This wall caused immense conflict as it split families and friends, contributed to numerous deaths, and highlighted sharp contrasts in economic and political stability.
On June 12, 1987, United States President Ronald Reagan delivered a speech in West Berlin demanding that Mikhail Gorbachev, General Secretary of the Communist Party of the Soviet Union, tear down the divisive Berlin Wall.
The uncompromising request was profoundly influential in igniting the process of tearing down the Berlin Wall and reuniting Germany. The Berlin Wall was 12 feet high and 96 miles long. This wall divided neighborhoods, streets, and houses. Behind the wall was a minefield, a deep road, guard dogs, watchtowers, and searchlights, just to make sure the wall was impenetrable.
It is striking as you realize that the wall completely surrounded all of West Berlin, essentially making it a prison for all of its citizens.
The Berlin Wall was built to keep East German citizens from fleeing to West Germany. West Germany contained more freedom and a better life, which many people wanted. East German leader Walter Ulbricht sealed the border under the facade of stopping capitalists from overthrowing the government, but it was really to stop the outflow of people from East Berlin to West Berlin. To contain the spread of communism, U.S. created a European recovery program, which was known as the Marshall Plan. This plan helped restore Western war areas' economic growth. The Soviet Union and Eastern countries opposed this, so they split Berlin in half since it was a Soviet-occupied zone and a democratic zone. Each part of Berlin was overseen by one of the countries.
The Berlin Wall was not East Germany's first attempt to keep their citizens within its borders, as they already had multiple other walls, fences, and minefields in place to scare their residents out of attempting to run away. Eventually, it got to the point where the only place a person living in East Germany could potentially hope to escape from was Berlin, because that was the Allied capital within Germany.
Local anarchist groups would protest against the wall by smashing windows and torching storefronts. The police sometimes responded to riots by throwing tear gas.
After the divide of East and West Germany following the end of World War II, East Germany became a terrible place to live, especially in comparison with West Germany, as East Germany was ruled by Joseph Stalin using communism, and West Germany was capitalist. East Germany did not have adequate food and resources for their residents, and there were few positives regarding their economic and political situations. The people of East Germany felt like prisoners, so much so that they were willing to risk the consequences of imprisonment and possibly even death in order to attempt to make it over the wall to West Berlin. West Berlin was surrounded by communist-controlled parts of Germany on all sides, so it became a place of refuge for people who could manage to escape there. People of West Berlin may not have had to endure the same types of struggles that people of East Germany did, but citizens of West Berlin were also subjected to the horrors of the Berlin Wall, as they were often forced to stand around helplessly without the ability to do anything, as people of East Berlin were guarded and watched by men in tanks. The wall did slow escape attempts from East Germany to West Berlin, but it did not end them, as about 10,000 people still attempted to get over the wall between 1961 and 1989. As many as 5,000 of those people managed to make it over the wall. However, approximately 260 of those 10,000 people died trying to make it over. When asked if the people of Berlin had gotten used to the Berlin Wall separating the two sides of the city, one Berlin resident pointed out the heart-wrenching truth that many families are split up by the wall and never get the chance to see one another due to the strained relationship between the two sides of the city, and that one can never get used to that.
Mikhail Gorbachev, the General Secretary of the Communist Party of the Soviet Union, came into power on March 11, 1985. He was in power until 1990. Gorbachev believed in reducing the army's presence in Eastern Europe. Gorbachev wanted to lessen tension and encourage a peaceful relationship between America and Germany. There are many examples showing Gorbachev openly supporting the reform to communism. When able, Gorbachev spoke openly about supporting these reformers. As communist regimes fell, Gorbachev did not fight but peacefully accepted the circumstances. He moved the country into a path towards representative democracy. He dismantled the totalitarian use of power that kept the Soviet economy functioning. Gorbachev acknowledged the bad economy and political system in the Soviet Union. The economy and living standards were low in some areas. Gorbachev did want the reform to be slow, but the change happened fast.
Prior to beginning a career in politics, Ronald Reagan was an American actor, and it was during his time in Hollywood as an actor that he formed his ideas of hatred towards the Soviet Union and communism as a whole.
Reagan was heavily anti-communism, which created a major strain on the USA and Soviet relationship. Reagan had been caught saying that the Soviet Union was an evil empire, the focus of evil in the modern world. This created strain, especially because the Berlin Wall signified the separation of these two views. Reagan said, "This is the only wall that's ever been built to keep people in, not keep people out."
Ronald Reagan immediately knew upon seeing the Berlin Wall for the first time that it needed to be knocked down because of the insurmountable intimidation that it presented to everyone near it, which only made it further serve as a representation of communism.
On the Berlin Wall, there were heart-wrenching graffiti and tributes to people who have been killed trying to cross the wall. Reagan was deeply affected by what he saw, especially by the red crosses painted on the western side of the wall to pay tribute to East Germans killed. Reagan and Gorbachev began to grow a relationship through exchanging formal messages about wars or about the INF. This relationship was not just political, but also was personable. Gorbachev would send personal greetings to the Reagan family, and Reagan invited Gorbachev to Washington. This budding relationship came at a time when the INF Treaty was being formed, showing a compromise between two countries. Gorbachev and Reagan compromised by the fact that they were willing to look past their opposing viewpoints to better their countries.
Ronald Reagan tested his relationship with Gorbachev in his speech by directly calling out his name and by so publicly taking him up on his word to change. The West German government requested that Ronald Reagan give an impromptu speech at the site of the Brandenburg Gate because they felt it would be beneficial for the citizens of Berlin to hear the words of President Reagan. Ronald Reagan had not even intended to give the speech as he was not planning to be in Berlin at all on that particular trip. Reagan knew that the United States government did not support his aggressive foreign policy and his desire to have the wall taken down, but impromptu or not, he did not allow it to stop him from speaking out about what he felt needed to be done in order for there to be peace between the Soviet Union and the United States. Ronald Reagan did not actually write the speech that he delivered in Germany, rather it was written by Peter Robinson.
Many debated over the key words, "tear down this wall." People thought the language could embarrass Gorbachev or was just not needed. The speech was debated even when Reagan was flying to Berlin. Reagan insisted on leaving that line, believing it would hit thousands of people. Reagan took care to make sure words were marked on his page. First, he grouped key phrases, underlined words, and placed pauses in the speech. Reagan wanted to give the speech a voice, changing the words on the paper into something more.
Many believe that President Reagan's speech was very influential in speeding up the process of the tearing down of the Berlin Wall, and that was recognized by many people in power in addition to all of those whom he inspired hope within. As a sign of thanks and recognition for his efforts to bring down the wall, President Reagan's library in California was given a fragment of the Berlin Wall after it was torn down.
The fall of the Berlin Wall did not only affect Berliners, but also signified the collapse of communism. This fall allowed Germans to reunify and Europe to reunite. After Reagan's speech, East Germany made orders to remove some checkpoints at the wall and to allow more East Berliners to be able to visit West Berlin. The uncompromising request that Ronald Reagan made in his speech at the Brandenburg Gate forced the Soviet Union to finally tear down the wall surrounding West Berlin.
The destruction of the Berlin Wall not only ended the conflict between West Berlin and the rest of East Germany, but it also ended the larger conflict between the United States and the Soviet Union.
The fall of the Berlin Wall weakened the Soviet Union's power and control over its citizens, leading to its eventual demise, which in turn ended the Cold War between the Soviet Union and the United States.